श्रीभगवानुवाच
मय्या सक्तमनाः पार्थ योगं जन्मदाश्रयः
संशयं समग्रं मां यथा ज्ञास्यसि तच्छृणु
ज्ञानं देहं दर्शनं इदं वक्ष्याम्यशतः
नेह भूयोऽन्यत् ज्ञातव्यम् अवशिष्यते
मनुष्याणां सहस्रेषु कश्चित् यतति सिद्धये
यततामपि सिद्धानां कश्चिन् मां वेत्ति तत्त्वतः
भूमिराधो नलो वायुः
कार इति यन्मे भिन्ना प्रकृतिरष्टधा भूता महाभागो ययेदं धार्यते जगत्
एतद्योनीनि भूतानि सर्वाणीत्युपधारय
कृष्णश्च जगतः प्रभवः प्रलयस्तथा
मत्तः परतरं
मयि सर्वमिदं प्रोतं सूत्रे मणिगणा इव अनवः सर्ववेदेषु शब्दखे पूरुषं नृषु जीवनं सर्वभूतेषु तपस्यास्मि तपस्विषु निर्बुद्धिमतामस्मि तेजस्तेजस्विनामघम् कर्माविरुद्धो भूतेषु कामोऽस्मि भरतर्षभ वेदितान् विद्धि तत्त्वहं तेषु ते मयि मोहितं नाभिजानाति मामेभ्यः परमव्ययम् मामेव ये प्रपद्यन्ते मायामेतां तरन्ति ते अपहृतज्ञाना आसुरं भावमाश्रिताः
चतुर्विधा भजन्ते माम्
आर्तो जिज्ञासुरर्थार्थी ज्ञानी च भरतर्षभ हि ज्ञानिनोत्यर्थम् अहं च मम प्रियः आस्थिरः स हि युक्तात्मा
ज्ञानवान् प्रपद्यते
वासुदेवः सर्वमिति समहात्मा सुदुर्लभः
कामैस्तैस्तैर्गजानाः प्रपद्यन्ते देवताः
नियममास्थाय प्रकृत्या नियता स्वया
यो यो
यो
यां यां
तनुं
भक्तः श्रद्धया
श्रद्धया
चित्तमिषति
चितिषति
तस्य पश्चाचलां श्रद्धां तामेव विदधाम्यघम्
श्रद्धया
तया
श्रद्धा युक्तः
श्रद्धया युक्तः
तस्याराधनमीहते
तस्याराधनमीहते
ततः कामान् मयैव विहितान्
अन्तवत्तु फलं
अन्तवत्तत्फलं बलं
तेषाम्
तेषां
तद्भवत्यल्पमेधसाम्
तद्भवत्यल्पमेधसाम्
इमान् देवयजो यान्ति मद्भक्ता यान्ति मामपि
अव्यक्तं
अव्यक्तं
व्यक्तिमात्मनम्
व्यक्तिमात्मनम्
मन्यन्ते
मामुपयः
महाबुद्धयः
परं भावमजानन्तो ममाप्यजमनुत्तमम्
नाहं
नाहं
प्रकाशकल्पस्य
प्रकाशकल्पस्य
योगमाया
योगमाया
आवृतः
समावृतः
वयं नाभिजानाति लोको मामजमव्ययम्
वेदाहं
वेदाहमतीतानि
समतीतानि वर्तमानानि चार्जुन
भविष्याणि च भूतानि मां तु वेद न कश्चन
इच्छाद्वेषसमुद्रेण
इच्छाद्वेषसमुद्रेण बद्धमोहेन
बद्धमोहेन
भारत
भारत
सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहम् तत्तेयान्ति परन्तप
येषां
निबद्धतां
बन्धकतां पापं
ज्ञानानां
जनानां
पुण्यकर्मणां
पुण्यकर्मणां
ये द्वन्द्वमोहनिर्मुक्ता भजन्ते मां दृढव्रताः
जरामरणमोक्षाय
जरामरणमोक्षाय
मामाश्रित्य
मामाश्रित्य
यन्ति
यन्ति
ते ब्रह्म तद्विरुत्कृष्णम् अध्यात्मं कर्म चाखिलम्
साधिभूतास्तेव
साधिभूतास्तेवं
साधियज्ञं
यज्ञं
विदये विदुः
विदुः
प्रयाणकालेऽपि च माम् ते विदुर्युक्तचेतसः
इति ज्ञानविज्ञानयोगो नाम
ज्ञानयोगो
सप्तमोऽध्यायः
सप्तमोऽध्यायः
वाच
अर्जुन
किं
किं तद्ब्रह्म
तद्ब्रह्म
किमध्यात्मम्
किमध्यात्मम् किं कर्म
कर्म
पुरुषोत्तम
भूतं च किं प्रोक्तम् अधिदैवं किमुच्यते
वसुदेवसुतं देवम् कंसचाणूरमर्दनम् देवकी परमानन्दम् कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम्
Today's subject matter of discussion is the seventh chapter. It is about the knowledge of God as defined by Ramanuja. In this chapter, the elucidation of the concept of Maya, which encompasses the knowledge, is seen. Number three, the formulation of the way of surrender as the only way for release of Maya. 12 slokas tell us about the knowledge about God. 13th shloka tells that knowledge is covered or closed by Maya. And those who surrender to me, they can remove this Maya. So, formulation of the way of surrender is the only way for release of Maya. It is the third subject. The fourth subject is classification of the ungodly. The fifth subject is specific interpretation of the classes of devotees into four, particularly Jnansu and Jnani. The specification of the content of Jnana. The sixth topic, the elaboration of the characteristics of the highest type of devotion, that is Jnani. And the last one, the understanding the conclusion, as referring to the three classes of devotees, meaning what they're expected to do and what they are not expected to do, or detailed or introduced, and they explained in detail in the next chapter. So, having known the content, we will go about the details. In the first six chapters, the Lord taught the practice of Karma Yoga, preceded by an exposition of the knowledge of the individual self, called as Pratyagatman. The vision of the individual self forms an integral part of worship that is called as Upasana or Bhakti. For attainment of Sriman Narayana, the concept of Sri Mahalakshmi, who is the Parabrahman, Supreme Brahman, in whom vests both the Vibhutis, Lila Vibhuti, comprising of his sports, as seen here, and Nitya Vibhuti, which we all attain after release, liberation. Nitya Vibhuti constitutes the three-fourths part of it, and Lila Vibhuti is one-fourth of it. It's just a point to realize. In the succeeding six chapters, 7 to 12, the Lord teaches the nature of Parabrahman, that is Paramatma, and Upasana, that is Bhakti, denoted by the term Bhakti itself. The Lord summarizes these expositions later in the 18th chapter, again in stanzas 53 to 54. Whereon the texts propound the Upasana, which is worship, meditation with the devotion, as being the means for attainment to the Supreme. The Upasana forms the means of liberation, as explained in Taitiriya Aranyaka. Knowing him alone becomes immortal here. By doing Upasana to him, that is Bhakti, he gets liberated. Purva Sutra tells. Brihadaranyaka also tells, verily, the self should be seen, should be meditated upon steadily. Should be meditated upon steadily. It also tells when the mind is pure, then dhyana originates. There is release. Mundakopanishad also tells all doubts get killed, all karmas perish when they have been perceived. Vidyate hriday granti, chidyante tavasamshayara, tasmindirishte paradare. The above and other texts go to show that through knowledge is indicated by the terms of dhyana and upasana. In the present chapter, the subject dealt with are Sarupayathatmya, or the real nature of the Supreme Person, concealment of the Bhagavad Sarupa by Prakriti, Sharanagati, or abject surrender to Him, or erasing Maya, four types of upasakas, and the man of knowledge, that is Jnani, being superior to others. The first 12 stanzas tell us about the Jnana and the Vijnana. Arjuna, now listen to me attentively and practicing yoga in full, conscious of me. How can you know me fully without any shadow of doubt? I shall now unfold to you in full this knowledge about God, along with the knowledge that makes it Vijnanam, that is qualified Vijnana, knowing which nothing else remains yet to be known in the world. Out of many thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved it, one might know me, and among such, one only knows me in reality. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, manas, buddhi, and ego. That is mind, intelligence, and ego sense. These constitute my eightfold prakriti. O mighty Arun Arjuna, this indeed is my lower prakriti. Know that there is another superior or higher nature of mine. It comprises living entities, life principle, Jiva Bhuta, which sustains the universe. Arjuna, know that all beings have evolved from these twofold nature of mine. Know for certain that I am both the origin and the dissolution for the entire universe. Prabhavaha, Pradayaha, Tatha. There is nothing superior to me. Arjuna, everything rests upon me as beads are strung on a thread. O son of Kunti, I am the taste of water, the light in sun, and the moon, and the holy syllable Om in Vedic mantras. I am the sound in the air and the manliness in men. Shabdakhe Purushandrishu. I am the pure water in the earth. I am the brilliance in the fire. I am the life in all things, and I am penance in all ascetics. Tapaschasmi tapasvishu. O Vartha, I am the original seed of all beings. I am the intelligence of the intelligent and the glory of the glorious. Of the mighty, I am the might, devoid of passion and desire. In all beings, I am the sexual desire that is not forbidden by scriptural injunctions. Know that all states of being, the sattva, goodness, rajas, passion, and tamas, inactivity, have evolved from me alone. In one sense, I am everything but independent. I am not under the modes of material nature, but they are within me. Deluded by these three modes emanating from Prakriti, the whole world does not know me, standing apart from these and immutable. This divine energy of mine, comprising the three modes, the divine Maya of mine, is hard to overcome, but those who have surrendered to me can easily go beyond it. Those evildoers who are grossly foolish, who are the lowest among mankind, whose knowledge has been carried away by delusion, Maya, and who are party to the aesthetic nature of the governments, such people do not surrender to me. O West of Bharata, four kinds of devotees of noble deeds render worship to me. They are those in distress, Artaha, the seeker of knowledge, Jignasu, the seeker of wealth, Artharthi, and the man of knowledge, Jnani. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and is always engaged in devotional service to me is the best. For I am very dear to him and he too is dear to me. Priyo hi jnaninotyartam aham sacha mohapriya. Indeed, all are magnanimous, but he who is the man of knowledge, I consider him to be very myself. Such a jnani who has his mind and intellect merged in me, he is sure to attain me as the highest goal. After many births, the man of knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing that Vasudeva is the cause of all causes. It is very rare to find such a great soul. Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Samahatma Sudurlabha, dictated by their inherent nature and their intelligence, having been carried away by desires, they resort to other deities, adopting disciplines peculiar to each. Whatever demigod a devotee chooses to worship, I make his faith in it steadfast in that very form. Endowed with such a faith, he endeavors to worship the demigod and through it has his desire fulfilled, which is reality, which in reality are granted by me. The fruits gained by such men of small understanding are limited and temporary. The worshippers of these demigods go to their planets, by, but my devotees eventually come to me. Devan deveto janti, tadbhakta yanti mamapi. These unintelligent men, not knowing that I am the supreme personality of the Godhead, Krishna, unsurpassable and imperishable, think of me to have assumed a finite form through birth, covered by Yogamaya, that is divine potency. I am not manifest all. Hence, the ignorant folk fail to recognize me as the unborn and imperishable. Arjuna, I know all beings, past as well as present, and also those yet to come, but me no one knows. O scion of Bharata, through delusion in the form of the pairs of opposites arising from desire and hatred, all living entities are subject to delusion as soon as they are born. But those men of virtuous deeds whose sins have come to an end are freed from the dualities of delusion. There is pairs of opposites, hate, love, etc. Worship me with a firm resolve in every way. Those who have taken refuge in me strive for liberation from old age and death. They know Brahman, the absolute self, nature itself, and activities leading to rebirth aspects. Those who know my integral part, comprising Adibhuta, higher material entity, Adhidaiva, highest among divinities, and Adhiyajna, the ultimate receiver of sacrifice offerings. They also can understand me and know me at the time of death. Besides the above mentioned category of aspirants seeking for Kaivalya, those seeking a fortune, knowing me as connected with the higher material entities, as being higher to demigods, and as being connected sacrifices. All these aspirants, including those for Kaivalya, have to observe performance of daily, periodical, and occasional rituals, Nitya, Naimittika, and Kamya, besides sacrifice. These aspirants, that is, Adhikaris seeking Kaivalya, wealth, liberation, know me at the hour of death in keeping with the objectives. Along with those striving for release from death and old age mentioned before, others like Jnani, knowing that I am connected with sacrifice, also know me at the time of death in keeping with their objective. So, to sum up, what is it we are expected to know is self-realization in the double sense of organizing and actualizing the self, liberates the self towards the final phase of its spiritual progress. The central principle, the direction and goal of the phase lies in the knowing of God, which knowing fulfills itself in meditation on God, and the meditation matures into love of God. Here, jnana means upasana, and upasana means bhakti. This twofold equation forms the crux of the theory of sadhana in the philosophy of Ramanuja. Bhakti of this nature requires as a precondition the self-realization articulated in the first major division of the Gita, first 6 chapters. The nature of the self-realization is also such that it must issue in bhakti, the fruition of the entire spiritual endeavor. The second division of the 6 chapters, according to Ramanuja, concerns itself with the nature of God and the nature of bhakti, the loving contemplation of God. The statement that the theme of these chapters is to work out and justify in the detailed interpretation of the text. The 7th chapter introduced the matter to be unfolded. To conclude, it describes as dealing with 5 principal topics. 1. The nature of the Supreme Being, the concealment and obscuration of the Supreme from the point of view of the finite consciousness by the principle of Maya. Number 3, the remedy against Maya as consistent of surrender to the Supreme. And 4, the several kinds of devotees. And number 5, the valuation of the devotee who is a man of knowledge as the highest type of devotee. A devotee must have a clear and adequate idea of the object of his devout contemplation. Sri Krishna indicates a leading characteristic of a true devotee. He is one whose mind is so wrapped in God, whose soul rests solely on God to such an extent that deprived of the awareness of the nature and glories of God, he finds himself disintegrating and in the process of annihilation. Such a devotee needs for sustaining himself in devotion a clear and adequate conception of his duty. Sri Krishna promises to impart this knowledge of God clearly, distinctively, and fully. Thus, by knowing which doubts are dispelled and a certain fullness is attained when knowledge is promised. It is jnana, knowledge of God's being in essence, and vijnana, the knowledge of his transcendence. It is a grasp of the divine in its essence and distinctiveness. When once this is gained, no gaps remain in knowledge concerning essentials. This knowledge is difficult and rare. One in 1,000 works steadily towards this spiritual achievement. One among 1,000 such aspirants seeks to know God and endeavors to achieve self-fulfillment through divine aid. Among 1,000 of such persons devoted to knowing God, only one knows God truly. In other words, spirituality is rare. Reliance on God for spiritual advance is rarer. And the true apprehension of God in the context is rarest. Hence, the substance of what is going to be expounded now is exceedingly difficult and is of the greatest value. It marks the summit of knowledge. Yajnatva naiva bhuyonyat jnatavyam avashishyate. Two fundamental entities constitute the whole of the universe. They are matter and spirit. Neither is unreal and neither is derived from the other. They are called two kinds of Prakriti, root principles. Between them, spirit called here the Jiva forms the higher Prakriti and the material principle is the lower. The spiritual principle is higher because it is the commanding factor in the situation and to it the physical reality owes its sustenance. These are propositions stated without much elaboration, for the main purpose of introducing them is not to defend or describe them, but to determine their final metaphysical status. These two original elements of reality belong to God and they constitute his twofold Prakriti, his twofold tools or powers with which he works in his cosmic manifestation. It is this assertion of their belonging to God that constitutes the central affirmation here. All creation proceeds from these basic factors, and those factors, in their turn, proceed from him. At the periodic reabsorption of the worlds, creation relapses into them, and thus it relapses into God. Thus, the entire universe comes from and goes back to God and constitutes His in an eminent sense. The cosmos in the basic categories explanatory of it form a realm of being rooted in God and subservient to Him. From the standpoint of causation, it is a realm of His effects, and from that of value, it is a realm of means to Him. This consideration as the supreme cause of all and the supreme end of all. In fact, this fact of his preeminence in the context of the world is itself given as an illustration for the general and comprehensive enunciation of his absolute preeminence from the standpoint of attributes such as knowledge and power. There is nothing else that is either superior or even equal to him in the greatness of attributes. This supreme spirit runs through all the manifold beings of the world, whether they be in their thousand form or in the developed condition of effects, permeating and sustaining all. It is the sustaining power within all. This controlling omnipresence is best brought out by regarding it as the soul permeating and maintaining all that exists. The beings so upheld from within truly constitute in their totality its body. Thus, all sustaining immanence can be finally conveyed by saying that all that is essential and of central value in all species and individuals in creation is God Himself. In reality, it is God that exists with all His mode as His splendor, and hence to affirm them in their uniqueness and similarity is just to declare Him as shining forth in and through them. They spring from Him, serve Him, and form His embodiment. Hence, it is He that truly is, with them as points of His self manifestation, as adjectival determinations forming integral part of His total expanse of being. Nature's existence means God's existence with nature as a mode of Himself. This intimate union is not inseparability in terms of mutual dependence, but in terms of the part deriving being and value from participation in the whole. The whole is the basic reality, and parts receive existential status by virtue of inheritance in the whole. Inseparability of the qualities does not compromise the primacy of the substance. It is togetherness we have here without obliterating the absolute and intrinsic reality at the substantial principle. There is something in the nature of the problem here. Ramanuja states here, and again, in commenting on verse 5 of the ninth chapter that God is self-sufficient and does not depend upon the finite reals for his self-maintenance. At the same time, it is a metaphysical fact for the system of thought that Brahman, in its complete actuality, includes the realm of finite reals. However, the inseparability and the self-completeness of the divine principle to be understood, a clear grasp of the nature of the infinite reality and the finite adjectival beings is called va, and the exact nature of the organic immanence or the former in the latter must be determined. God's inclusion of all else is not for the purposes of self-completion, but for the purpose of imparting reality and value to the finite. While the finite derives reality and value from the organic relation to the infinite being, the necessity for the finite, if you may so speak, from the standpoint of God, is not for gaining being or value, but for imparting them. It is a necessity that flows from overflowing perfection and fullness that demand communication. The necessity is supreme from the standpoint of the derivative reals is for purpose of drawing from it in the way, even the drawing from it, the substance of their reality and fulfillment. It is an inseparable relation, indissoluble togetherness, owing to which the finite enters into the realm of reality and value, and the infinite releases its abundance to confer existence and work on the finite. The absolute self possesses its centrality and perfection in and through this self imparting relationship. Its great immanence is not for the sake of self completion, but on account of it. We have here neither the notion of reciprocal dependence nor the utter transcendence of God, for whom the world of finite reals is nothing in the last analysis. While the first alternative nullifies the self sufficient perfection of God, the second cancels the ontological status and worth of creation. The self sufficiency of the divine principle and the organic inseparability of the finite can be maintained only by the conception of their mutual relation as well as the perfection of the infinite, overflowing to sustain and perfect divine. There is a reciprocity of relationship, one-sidedness of dependence, and the sponsoring the imperfect into being by the perfect or process of self-communication. One of the consequences of the creative manifestation of God is the bringing out of Prakriti in all its aspects, in rendering its potencies of the nature of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas fully active. When Prakriti comes into the fullness of actualization, its sway on the Purushas, the Jivas, still under the bondage to matter, is established in full swing. Prakriti deludes them into self-forgetfulness, and they look upon Prakriti as all in all. Their consciousness is suppressed into a materialistic mold, and the supreme power of which Prakriti itself is a lower mode is concealed effectively. In matter, the bound jiva perceives the whole of reality and the whole of value. Nature traps the soul in many forms as the object of enjoyment. As the body, as the senses, and the subtle forces operative in less cognizable ways. The principal consequence of this enslavement is the loss of vision of God. This is what turns embodiment into blindness, into a sleep, nay, into spiritual death itself. Awareness of God is real life, and to be deprived of it is death in the most substantial sense. Prakriti in this capacity is called Maya. Maya is not illusion, but a tremendous power whose effects are wonderfully variegated, and one of its effects may be of the nature of illusion. Nature is not an illusion, but by virtue of its immense identity, it generates all the illusions of mortals. To call Prakriti itself an illusion is to put the effect in the place of the cause. The phenomenon of illusion must be explained in terms of factors which are not illusory. What the illusion presents may not be explicable, but the illusion itself, as a cyclical occurrence, must fall within the field of the explicable. You Prakriti, understood as a principle of vast resourcefulness of fecundity, holds the key, as it were, for explaining the phenomenon illusion. The power beings, the power belongs to God, and it forms, as previously enunciated, the lower part of its cosmic possession. This fact of its belonging to God renders it unconquerable without a special technique adequate for the purpose. It binds the souls with its threefold potencies and gunas, which seem designed for effecting their bondage. The only remedy against Maya, the only way of escape from its chains, is to surrender to God, who is the infinite, both in his power and compassion. Those who are gifted with the insight to see this sovereign cure and take to the Vattili, vanquished Maya, and cross over to the life of freedom from the blindness of spirit. Why does it so happen that this way of release into the blissful practice of devotion is not readily adopted? How do men miss so powerful and natural a remedy? Men weighed down by the accused Krishna, accursed Krishna, or the past, do not rise to the height of a soul necessary for the adoption of the. There are four types of such men, forming a descending series in the order of richness. There are, first of all, those who fail to rise to the understanding of God and his misconceived all else in existence. Next to them, there are those who have a general understanding of divine reality but are not inclined to perfect that understanding. Their case is that a failure of interest. The third group consists of those whose understanding of God gets lost and effaced by contrary points of view emanating from ill-grounded sophistries. Their flaw is lack of intellectual stamina. This is not a case of failure of understanding, but that is the lack of logical power to sustain oneself in the understanding somehow gained. The last and the most degraded type is constituted by men in whom a firmly established understanding of God's nature and his glories generates only hatred towards him. This may be simply named as the failure of heart. These four levels of ungodliness are marked by failure of understanding, failure of inclination, failure of logic, and failure of the heart. It is this fourfold depravity that accounts for men not turning to God and surrendering to Him for freedom. Corresponding to these, there are four types of men blessed by the merit of a good past, who resort to God by way of surrender and get into the freedom of bhakti. Here, the types are enumerated in ascending order. The first kind of devotee is one who has sustained a worldly loss and is anxious to recover what he has lost. He applies to God by way of devotion for process of restoration. The second kind of devotee practices devotion for gaining worldly goods. The two kinds are qualitatively on the same level. While the first has a retrospective concern, the second seeks advance in worldly prospects. The third kind of devotee is in a higher level. He worships God in order to achieve self realization. He aims at self knowledge and self recovery. His endeavor is to raise himself to his true nature, to enjoy the life of knowledge, for the self's innate character and function lies in knowledge. To attain the self by way of direct apprehension as the subject of knowledge is the goal for this devotee of God. The Gita describes this devotee as one who desires knowledge, and Ramanuja interprets this desire as the desire for the enjoyment of authentic selfhood, which consists in the unimpeded exercise of the knowing capacity. The last and the highest type of devotee is the man of knowledge. He is not satisfied with self realization, for he sees the self as forming a means to God, as of value only in serving God, and hence he seeks God as the supreme goal. His endeavor is for God realization. He adores God for the purpose of attaining that. The lover of God, whose love is based on knowledge, has a twofold distinction. His love is abiding and not transient. His devotion to God is just a means for gaining some other end. When that end is attained, the instrumental devotion ceases. But if God is loved for his own sake and not as a means, this cause for the cessation of devotion is not there, and hence it remains perpetual. In the second place, devotion that is instrumental cannot be single minded and undivided, for the devotee is attached to his end also, and he is interested in God for securing it. His heart is divided, and his love of God is not integral. But the man of knowledge who seeks God as his sole end, and for whom the realization that God is the supreme and all inclusive purpose, loves God with the singleness of undivided love. Sri Krishna declares such love is great beyond words, and Ramanuja comments that as love is infinite, no adequate weighing of its range and intensity is possible. Even as the devotee offers his infinite love to God, he becomes an object of equal love to God. All the devotees are noble-minded, Udaras Sarvayevaite, and generous. From Sri Krishna's point of view, whoever and for whatever reason offers his love to God creates thereby an opening and an opportunity for God to bestow his grace on him. And this bestowal of grace is a necessity of the divine nature. The seeker of God is almost a benefactor from this standpoint. Receptivity to divine grace is construed as a contribution, for such is the need of God. It is this consideration that lies at the back of the obligation of the epithet generous to the devotee. The bountifulness of God is so great that the creation of opportunities by the finite soul for the exercise of that divine virtue is hailed as itself an act of generosity. While this is the general appreciation of devotees, the devotee who has knowledge and is impelled by that to devotion receives this highest praise. He seeks God as his supreme goal, or without him, he finds himself incapable of living. Such a devotee is regarded by God as his soul, for in him he too finds his life. That God is the soul of all is a metaphysical truth, while that the true lover of God is the very soul of God is a truth of love. It has a result of merit accumulated through countless lives in the past that an individual comes to understand the nature, attributes, and glories of God. The content and the knowledge whose possession elevates the devotee to the highest rank has been formulated in essentials in the opening verses of the chapter. Such knowledge accrues as an outcome of great holiness of character built up through a series of lives. The man of this knowledge resorts to God as all the means at his disposal and as the objects of all his aspirations. He loves God with all the love his nature is capable of. Such a great soul devotee is indeed rare in the world. There is supremacy of the Jnani. So saying, he concludes the chapter. We explain 6 more words in the next chapter, the Gita. अस्मद्गुरुसमारम्भाम् गिरिशेखरमध्यमाम् लक्ष्मीवल्लभपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्.